Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how to about naming and writing formulas of covalent compounds. What you learned before was for ionics, so we did those top part of each of those flowcharts. Now, let's do these problems, but let's say we start with a non-metal. So before we do those, let's talk about a little bit more information. Now, remember, covalent compounds are composed of nonmetals that are bonded by covalent bonds. And these covalent compounds have chemical formulas which shows the composition of the compound. And for covalent compounds, they use prefixes in their name to symbolize the number of each element in the compound. And the prefixes are here. They are also on the backside of your flowchart underneath the polyatomics and the Roman numeral chart, so the bottom table. You don't need to memorize that because they're on your flowchart, but those are our prefixes. So 1 is mono, 2 is di, 3 is tri, 4 is tetra, 5 is penta, 6 is hexa, 7 is hepta, 8 is octa, 9 is nona, and 10 is deca. So with that being said, we have our flowchart. We're going to start looking at the flowchart for a chemical formula. And you already had these two notations from last time, but we're going to add one more. On top of the box, it says write prefix of number of first box. No mono for first box, meaning we will never start a name with mono. So if there's only one of the first box, just skip that step and move on to the next box of write name. So with that being said, let's go ahead and do examples. Example number 1, we have NO. We know its atomic symbol, so box any polyatomic ions and any elements left over. There is no polyatomic ions, but there's 2 elements. We have nitrogen and we have oxygen. Now, when you look at nitrogen on the periodic table, nitrogen is a non-metal. So we would go all the way down to non-metal, and we would write the prefix for the number of the first box. Now, there is no number after nitrogen, so the number is 1 because we don't write ones in chemistry. But remember, I said no mono for first box. Even though the prefix for 1 is mono, we don't do it for the first box. So we're going to skip that and just write the name of the first box. And the name of the first box is nitrogen. Then we're going to write the prefix of number of second box. So looking at our second box, there is no number after it. So again, it's going to be 1. And the prefix for 1 is mono. We can do it for the second box. So we'll write mono. And then we're going to write the name of our second box with IDE ending. The name for our second box is oxygen, but that's going to be oxide. So the name for NO is nitrogen monoxide. Example number 2, we have N2O. So we have a chemical formula, box any polyatomic ions and elements. There is no polyatomic ions, but we do have nitrogen and oxygen. Nitrogen is a nonmetal, so we're going to write prefix of number of first box. We have 2 of our first box, and the prefix for 2 is di. Then we're going to write the name of our first box, and the name of our first box is nitrogen. So we have dinitrogen. Now we're going to write the prefix for our second box. Now there is no number after the second box, so it is 1. And the prefix for 1 is mono. And we're going to write the name of our second box with ID ending. Our second box is oxygen, but that becomes oxide. So we have dinitrogen monoxide. Example number 3, we have S2Cl3. We're given a formula, so box any polyatomic ions and elements. There is no polyatomic ions, but we do have sulfur and chlorine. Sulfur is a nonmetal, so prefix of the number of the first box. We have 2 of the first box, and the prefix for 2 is di. Write the name of the first box, and the name of our first box is sulfur. Now we write the prefix of the number of the second box. We have 3 of our second box, and the prefix for 3 is tri. And then we're going to write the name of our second box. And the name of our second box is chlorine, but we need ID ending, so it's going to become chloride. So we have disulfur trichloride. Last example for this one, again, chemical formula, box any polyatomic ions and element. There is no polyatomic ions present, but we do have chlorine and oxygen. Now, chlorine is a nonmetal, so we're going to write the prefix of the first box. We have 2 of the first box. The prefix is di. Then we're going to write the name of our first box, and the name of our first box is chlorine. Now we're going to write the prefix of number of second box, and we have 7 of our second box, so that is prefix hepta. And we're going to write the name of the second box with IDNE. Second box is oxygen, but that becomes oxide. So we have dichlorine heptaoxide. And that is all you do for chemical formula. Now let's look at the other flowchart, which we start with the chemical name. There is one annotation I want you to do for this one, and that first box says write prefix of write subscript of first prefix, write no prefix, arrow, it is 1. Example number 1, we have carbon tetrafluoride. So looking at our first word, we have carbon. If you find carbon on the periodic table, carbon is a nonmetal. So we're going to underline all prefixes, and we only see one prefix, and that is tetra. Now we're going to write the atomic symbol of the first word. First word's carbon. Carbon's atomic symbol is C. Now we're going to write the subscript of the first prefix. Well, carbon doesn't have a prefix. We have nothing underlined. So no prefix, it is 1. So we have 1 carbon, but again, we don't write ones in chemistry, so we're going to move on. And we're going to write the atomic symbol of the second word. Second word is fluoride. That's fluorine. So F. And the subscript of the second prefix is tetra. The number for tetra is 4. So the answer is C, F4. Example number 2, we have dichlorine heptanitride. Our first word is chlorine. That is a nonmetal. So we're going to underline all prefixes, and we have 2. We have di and hepta. We're going to write the atomic symbol of the first word. The first word's chlorine. The atomic symbol is Cl. There's an error. Let me draw that out. Cl. And now we're going to write the subscript for the first prefix. The first prefix is di. That's number 2. So we have Cl2. Cl2. Now we're going to write the atomic symbol of our second word. This is nitride. That's nitrogen. Nitrogen is N. And the subscript for the second prefix, hepta, is 7. So it's 7. So it's Cl2N7. Example number 3, we have sulfur tetrafluoride. First word is sulfur. Sulfur is a nonmetal, so underline all prefixes. We only have 1. We have tetra. So we're going to write the atomic symbol of the first word. Sulfur has atomic symbol of S. Write write subscript of our first prefix. We have no first prefix. There's no prefix with sulfur, so no prefix it is 1, and we don't write 1, so we're going to move on. Write atomic symbol of second word. We have oxide, that's oxygen, so O. And the prefix and the subscript for our second prefix, we have tri, that's number 3, so SO3. And our last one, pentanitrogen monoxide. First word is nitrogen, that's a nonmetal, so underline all prefixes. We have 2, penta and mono. So we're going to write the atomic symbol of our first word. Nitrogen has an atomic symbol of N. Write subscript of first prefix. First prefix is penta, that is 5. Write atomic symbol of second word. Our second word is oxide, that's oxygen, so O. And write subscript for our second prefix. Second prefix is mono, that's 1. We don't write ones, so that is our final answer, N51. And that's it.